Fear Zone channel, your channel of haunted stories. Good evening everyone, and now, let's go to today's story, which is from Marcia, and this happened to her, in the city of Paranavaí, which is in Brazil, and at that time that was in the year 2006, Miss Marcia was 36 years old. And today I'm going to tell what happened to me some years ago when I passed a danger in the dawn, but something supernatural occurred that changed everything for me. And it all starts like this. My name is Marcia, and at that time I lived on a farm with my husband and 2 teenage children in a rural village in my city, and also I did extra manicure services in my region, which was to paint the nails of customers. Well, one day, I met a friend of mine on the street and started to talk a little with her, and this woman ended up talking about something that happened a few days ago, in which my friend was returning from the market around 9 o'clock at night, but when she arrived in some streets near her house, a man began to follow her through a dirt road. As soon as my friend saw some people on another street, she went towards these people to save herself from the man, but soon she looked back, and this suspicious guy disappeared from the road. So, my friend managed to get to her house. After this chat, I went back to my house, very worried about this story. But then the days went by, and I had already forgotten this account of this friend. Well, one day, I went to do the nails of a woman in a farm near my neighborhood, and this was early evening. However, after I finished the woman's nails and feet, an acquaintance showed up at the farm, and I had to do the lady's hands and feet. Anyway, it was very late at night, so I left this farm, and I caught a bus at the bus stop to get to my neighborhood. As soon as this bus arrived, I got on this vehicle and walked a little on this bus, and soon I arrived in my neighborhood, but from this place to my house, I had to walk another 10 minutes to get to my place, and I walked to this dirt road, and it was more or less midnight at this time. Finally, while I was walking on the dark road, it was total silence. I was alone in that place, but when I looked back, I saw a man walking behind me, about 40 meters away. I was very scared, because that guy appeared on the road, and for sure, he would have come out from some bushes nearby. I was very scared at that time, because I heard his footsteps, walking faster and faster coming after me. However, I entered a street, and I already hid in a quick bush, and I stayed quietly hiding in the middle of the vegetation. Then the guy appeared on the street, and he stopped, and kept looking both sides of the road, like trying to find me, and looking at the woods. I was very scared at that time, because the guy decided to enter the side of the woods where I was hiding, and he could find me. I was scared at this time, but I couldn't risk running, because there was no one on the road, because for sure, I could draw the attention of this guy, and he could catch me. But luckily for me, I heard a noise on the other side of the woods, and the man who was chasing me stopped looking for me there, and he went to the road and entered on the other side of the woods to chase the one who made that noise, and that was my luck. Of course, I stayed in the vegetation crouching down so that nobody would see me, because this guy could be hiding in the bushes to take me by surprise. I stayed, just watching the dirt road and the vegetation around the road, and before long, and to my amazement, I saw something running through the woods where the guy had entered, and then I got a fright, because the man who was chasing me left the bush and went running along the road, and something else happened, because a kind of strange and huge animal also came out of the bush and ran after the suspect and caught this man on the road, and knocked him down on the ground, and began to attack him with several bites, and in all this despair, I saw this creature doing something strange, because the boy managed to get free of the animal, but this beast ended up standing only on two legs, as if it were people, and trying to surround the guy, so he does not escape. I, seeing this creature, was very perplexed and scared, because for sure it was a werewolf. Even with much fear, seeing all this happening, I decided to leave that place, because I would take advantage of the distraction of the fight between the creature and the suspect. With that, I left running through the woods, and didn't even look back to see what was happening, or how the fight ended. After running away, I arrived at a friend's house, and asked her for help, and everything worked out fine, because this woman attended me, and saw me very scared. I told her what had happened, about the creature and the man who was attacked on the road. I got in the car with them, and we took the road, and we were passing the street, where I stayed hidden, and there was a lot of blood on the floor of the road, but I didn't see any more signs of that guy, who was attacked by the creature. That for me, that creature was a werewolf, because he had an appearance of a deformed dog, and that stood only on two legs, and his eyes were lit like lights, which is a common feature in these creatures. After that, I arrived at my farm, and my husband was angry about what happened, so he took his rifle and kept watch at the house, and also he didn't go after the guy or the werewolf, because he didn't want to get involved in this story, because it could have happened, some tragedy with this guy that the beast attacked on the road, and the police might want to get us involved in this story. Well, nothing happened at dawn, and as the hours passed, the day dawned, but I was still very traumatized from being chased by the suspicious man and seeing a werewolf. But in the late afternoon, we learned that the police found the man who had followed me and who was attacked by the beast I saw, and the suspect was badly injured, between life and death. We learned all this from the television news, but this man from the television news is that he was already wanted by the police, and he had a long criminal record of having made several victims, that he attacked women in several cities with brutal crimes. Well, at least, the cops never came after me to find out more about this case, but I stayed around for a long time, thinking about this creature and all that happened to me. And stopped to think better, actually for me, that werewolf ended up saving me from this maniac that dawn, and that I thank this beast until today, and the mystery that remained in this horror story is that I do not know who turned this creature, and maybe, even after this attack, the military forces of the city, and maybe, even after this attack, the military forces of the city would be looking for this animal that attacked the man on the road, and for sure the guy that transforms into this werewolf should have already left the city, so that he would not be hunted in the form of a beast, because this tragedy of the wounded maniac on the road happened, and the police officers could be hunting this dangerous animal. My husband and I had to hide this werewolf story from people because of the risk of being summoned by the police. Anyway, I never heard another report of this werewolf in my neighborhood. Well guys, thanks for watching the video, and if you like it, leave your like and subscribe to the channel Fear Zone. Until the next story. Canal Fear Zone, your channel of real and haunted stories. Good evening everyone, and now we go to today's story, which is from Mr. Hernandez, and it happened to him in the city of Carazinho, which is in Brazil, and at that time, that was in the year 2016, Mr. Hernandez was 42 years old. And it all started like this. I live with my family in a humble village with only a few houses around, and in this neighborhood there is a lot of vacant land too, and the streets of this place are all dirt. But besides this, during the day, I was working at the time on a farm that was close to my neighborhood. One evening, when I was returning from work, I arrived at my residence, and as usual, I took a shower, and then I had dinner, and then I started to watch a little television. As soon as I had done all this, and it was past midnight, I rolled my cigarette and went to the backyard of my house and started smoking. I was there smoking quietly in the early morning, and suddenly I saw my neighbor, who was already a lady over 60 years old, opening the door of her house, and she went out into the backyard of her residence and began to put food for her dogs to eat, and I stood there watching all that movement. Well, this neighbor had a very old husband, and they raised in their backyard many chickens and even some ducks. But what happened in this neighbor's house was that her dogs started barking at the fence, but these dogs were a little far away from the wooden fence, and they were afraid of something. I was intrigued by this scene, but when I looked right, I saw a figure of a huge animal moving through the vacant lot next to the neighbor's house, and it even seemed that this animal had a very strong glow in his eyes, which left me very surprised, and this beast seemed to be hidden in the woods, and looking at the neighbor in a strange way, as if it wanted to attack the old woman, but thankfully, the dogs made a lot of noise, and this animal ended up disappearing from my sight, but the neighbor was also scared, so she went inside her house, but for sure, she did not see that animal. But I was still smarting about this animal that had appeared in the bush, and in this, I ended up taking a flashlight because I didn't know exactly what that beast was, and also as my house was close, that creature could appear in my backyard. I passed the light of the flashlight through the vacant lot and saw nothing through the woods, but after a few minutes, the neighbor opened the door of her house again and started throwing some pieces of meat for her dogs. But with that, the neighbor and her dogs were distracted, and that's when I saw the shape of that creature with the lighted eyes again, and it was near the fence in the backyard of the neighbor's house, and it looked like it wanted to attack the lady, and I saw the danger that this old woman was going through, and I didn't waste any more time, and I ran into my house and got my hunting rifle and went back into my backyard, and when I look again, I already saw that animal almost climbing the fence to jump into the neighbor's yard and would take the old woman by surprise, and this beast was almost 30 meters away from me, and it was at this time that I pointed my gun and shot the creature, which fell to the ground roaring, but the creature got up quickly and started running away. I shot the creature again, but the beast went into the dark woods and disappeared, and the neighbor who was feeding her dogs didn't understand what was happening, and she ran into her house, scared. But what was surprising about all this was that how that creature managed to climb the bamboo fence, because for me, that beast would have been standing before jumping over the fence, and that's what confused me about the whole story. But what happened next is that I saw that some neighbors turned on the lights at their residences to see what was happening, but no one went outside. With that, I then went inside my house, and my wife came all scared asking me what I had done. I explained to her about the creature that was prowling around the nearby vacant lots and how this animal seemed to be dangerous. But what happened after half an hour was that 2 police cars arrived in front of my house, and the officers came to talk to me, and they asked me if I was the one who was shooting with the rifle at dawn, because one of my neighbors called the police center to make this complaint. I said yes, but I told the officers that I shot a large and strange animal that was prowling around my neighbor's house. After explaining everything to them, the officers went to see the place where the animal appeared, and those officers saw by flashlight that there was blood on the floor. The guards were suspicious that it could be a man that I would have hit the shot. I said it was a creature. The policemen were suspicious of something. They began to search the nearby woods for what I had shot, but after walking along with the police through the woods vegetation, one of the policemen heard the rapid breathing of something nearby, and that's when we passed the flashlight at one point of the dark underbrush, and we saw a creature nearby, and we went to this animal, and when we got close to this creature, we got the biggest fright, because this beast was grunting and moaning in pain. And it was a very strange being, because it looked like a very strange kind of dog, with a dark coat and failed. And this creature, seeing us close, it tried to get up to run, but to our amazement, this beast stood up like a man, balancing on two legs, but soon it fell to the ground, and sure enough, it was very wounded with the shot that hit it. And it was at this time that we were looking at each other's faces, because we already knew that this beast was a werewolf, and seeing more by the light of the flashlight, it had arms and a body like a man, but the legs were similar to the legs of a dog, and we seeing that monster, which seemed to be very dangerous, the police officers were with their guns pointed at the werewolf, but they did not shoot, and soon called some military institution. At this time, the guards told me to go back to my house, and they told me not to tell this werewolf story to anyone, and also not to worry about it anymore, that from now on, they would solve this creature's case. Well, I was relieved, and went back to my residence. Anyway, I kept an eye on the street, and soon after a few minutes, a fire truck arrived, and these people went to join the police, and after some time, these firemen carried the werewolf on a stretcher and put a blanket of cloth over the creature so that none of my neighbors could see what they were taking, and in a great hurry, the firemen put the werewolf inside the vehicle and disappeared from the scene. The fact of all this was that some neighbors came to talk to me about what had happened. I invented that there were two strange creatures, and the police told me that they were chupacabras, and that I caught one of these animals, and the other escaped, and also warned that it was not good to be fooling around at night, because this creature could be around and attack distracted people. Well, I didn't want to tell the truth, because not even in a chupacabra they believed, imagine in a werewolf. However, a few days passed after the capture of the werewolf, and I was afraid to be called at the police station, because for me, that creature was a werewolf, because then, when morning came, that creature could return in the form of man again, and as I shot the creature, I was afraid to answer the processes of having hurt someone. But to my surprise, I did not receive any summons from the police or justice, and of course, as nothing happened to me, I decided to stay quiet and not mess with this story of werewolf, not to be left for me in justice. And also, I do not know what the police did with the werewolf, but that day, I know what I shot and what I saw, and it was a werewolf, and they really exist, and that was my true horror story that I spent with a werewolf. If you like the video, subscribe to the channel and leave your like to receive more scary stories.